think fans would be like most excited about the Supergirl show?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. I don't know. I think what's great about these shows is that people watch them for different reasons, and there are some people who are going to come because they want to see the visual effects. They want to see her flying, and catching planes, which is really cool. And I think some people are going to come because it's a show about sisters, and two sisters who fight and bicker, but they still love each other. And that's not something that you see a lot on TV right now. And I think some people are going to come because it's just a fun, cool show. It's going to be a great, fun hour that a family can watch together, which we also think is really important.
I love Superman and the world of Superman, all the deep mythology, the family, all the different characters. How deep is the show going to go into that mythology?
I mean, pretty deep. I mean, obviously the show starts on Krypton. I think one of the most interesting things about Kara as opposed to Clark is that, for all practical purposes, Clark is from Kansas. He was born on Krypton, and obviously he brings his powers with him. But, from the time he was a baby, he grew up here. Jonathan and Martha Kent are his parents. And Jor-El and Laura are more of an abstract. But for Kara lived on Krypton until she was 13 years old. She grew up on this alien planet with alien things. She grew up on a planet where she knew that they weren't alone in the universe, that from her perspective, that there were millions of planets full of life. And then all of a sudden, all that was taken away from her. Like, her parents died, her friends, her home, and her world. So, we're able to talk about Krypton in the present tense in a way because she remembers all the different guilds, which are mentioned throughout, the second episode. And we're able to have flashbacks in the show to her time on Krypton. So we get to see a little bit more Krypton, but we also get to see it most times you see it's the last day of its existence. You get to see it when it was like a normal place and it was thriving, and a lot of Kara's experiences there help influence, sometimes she remembers the clue that she needs to solve a case here on Earth, and other times it's just getting to understand her background and why she is who she is.
How do you handle the red and blue elephant in the room?
You're not saying I'm fat, are you?
No. Am I going to say you're fat? No. The Superman element, we brought up the Superman element, but it's...
we actually, one of our early episodes kind of addresses why he's not on the show every week. It was really Greg from the beginning said, if we're going to do a show about Supergirl, it has to be in the world that Superman exists. And one of the sort of themes of the show is that, for everybody in our lives, there's always that person who's doing it better than you are. It's your boss, it's your friend, your brother. There's always that person that you compare yourself to, and am I good enough? And they're having success doing it their way. Can I have success doing it my way? So we sort of, in a way, we treat the idea of Superman as the sort of that's the perfect way to do it. And that's the way Kara sees it, that he's sort of doing it the perfect way, and she's learning that that's not how she wants to do it, and that in some ways she can be more successful than him because she has allies, she has friends, she has these relationships, she has a relationship with her sister, which are all things that the Superman that we've sort of created is a bit more of a loner.
Will the flashbacks be a huge part as an Arrow, or will they be only used a couple of times?
I think it'll be more like Flash. I think that sometimes there'll be flashbacks to Midvale when we see her, Kara and Alex growing up living with Helen Slater and Dean Cain. So it's not going to be in every episode, 5-beat story the way the islands in Hong Kong have been on Arrow. It'll be more like Flash, where some episodes will have them and some episodes will have one flashback to Krypton. It won't necessarily be a whole story, and maybe down the road we can have the flashback version of when we do the all flashback episode on Arrow. But that's in Success.
What do you think is the one unique quality that Supergirl brings to the table compared to the Flash or Arrow?
I think part of it is that she's a woman, and I think that what's great about Kara is that she doesn't have to give up being a woman to be a hero. I think a lot of times when you see female heroes, they've been stripped of their femininity. They've it's like, oh, she's badass, but Kara's badass, but she can still be a girl. And what we're saying is, being a girl isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can have feelings, you can be multi-layered, and then some of it I think is just without making grand statements about, it's just about her just doing it by example, that you see that she's just every bit as capable as any of these guys.
What's my question? Somebody's got a question.
Since the actors don't know, is there something coming up in the first part of the season that you really want to point the fans to? That you really want them to, maybe an episode or a key development?
Oh, I have so many things to tell you.
Just start going and somebody will tell you to stop.
As always, I think that we're gonna, there are some sort of classic Superman villains that we're gonna have on the show that you'll like, just as we do on any of the shows that we work on, they'll go through the filter of how we interpret them. There are some villains that, as far as we know, we've never really seen portrayed in live action before, so we're really excited about that. And then there's there's some parts of the Superman mythology that we're getting to explore. Some of them have been explored before, that we're getting to explore in our way. I don't know. I can't say anything. I want to say things. You guys are next year. You're gonna be like, when I saw episode 7 and they did that thing, you knew that and you didn't tell me.
Exactly.
Real quick, Donna's influence. Because it felt like, in watching the pilot in a very good way, it felt like a modern version of a Richard Donner take on Superman.
Yeah, and honestly, and I say this with zero disrespect to any iteration of Superman that came after the Donner, but for us that was the one that really touched us as children. And there is something about it, like being part of your DNA, and that was always sort of the star that we were guided by, because there was a truth to the Donner version, and a reality, and ironically a groundedness, and that we felt very strongly that we wanted to capture, and truthfully that wasn't really what was out there right now in the comic book. Thank you. In the comic book world, that that sort of like unabashed hope and brightness and light, and that was very important to us. And it was funny, Peter Roth, who runs Warner Brothers Television, after he saw the pilot, he said, Melissa is the closest I've seen to Christopher, the closest feeling I've gotten to see with anybody with that S that I've gotten since Christopher Reeve, and we really feel that too.